welcome to another edition of The Scoop featuring the champ, Bola Ray. And he's got a special episode tonight profiling the great American boxer, Archie Moore.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? Today, I'm talking about a guy who, still to this day, has the most knockout wins over elite level boxers in the sport's history. He was the light heavyweight champion for a decade.
Wow.
A decade in the day and age where in that decade he could have had three careers today. This is a guy that often went up to heavyweight just to test his ability, fought for the world title twice, lost a controversial loss to the legend of legends, Rocky Marciano. My name is Bola Raymond Olubuwale, and this is The Scoop. Today's episode will be on the son of one Thomas and Lorena Wright, who insisted he was born December 13th, 1916 in Collinsville, Illinois. But when his mother is put the exact same question, she seems to remember him being born December 13th, 1913. 3 years older, in Benoit, Mississippi. Now, Archie Lee Wright, his father abandoned the family when he was really young, and his mother struggled in vain to keep him and his sister fed and supported. So she did what she thought was best and gave her two kids up to her sister and brother-in-law, Cleveland and Willie Pearl Moore. Cleveland and Willie Pearl raised the two siblings as if they were their own, and also gave them Cleveland's last name, hence Archie Moore. Now, Archie went to school, started school with that as his legal name, and when asked why, it was just easier than to having to explain all what I just did. So, in 1928, Cleveland, Archie Moore's uncle, ends up passing away. And without this strong male leadership, young Archie did what a lot of young youth do, and when they are without formidable guidance, and he joined a street gang. In doing so, it wasn't too long after that he was actually arrested for stealing money from a motorman's cash box on the streetcar. I guess that's how they took money those days. He was sentenced to 3 years of reform school, but upon being released, he got a job at the Civilian Conservation Corp in the Forestry Division. Now, this is apparently where he made the decision he's gonna become a boxer. And apparently there's a story of him riding on the back of a truck that would be driving down primitive roads through the thicket, and he'd be practicing bobbing and weaving branches as they're flying by him. Um, there's easier ways to become a champion, but sure, you do you. Uh, Archie's team. Archie was part of an amateur boxing squad, and they went on to compete in a number of tournaments, and notably, notably, Golden Glove Championships in Southern Missouri and Illinois. Now, Archie remembers a fight with one Bill Richardson, a white boy, and yeah, the fight was going Archie's way, but the ref was getting frustrated with Archie's shellacking of this kid and kept warning him about hitting low. Well, Archie thought if he threw his punches any higher, he'd miss this kid altogether. So be it. He then concluded that from round 2 on, he's just going to go headhunting, and that's all he did. But in doing so, he caught this kid with a blistering right hand, which, in his recollection, he was surprised that it didn't take his head off his shoulders. At which point in time, Archie heard somebody say from the crowd, "Yeah, for 2 cents, I'll shoot the nigger." It was time for Archie to turn pro. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That was the South. That was in the 40s, I guess. With that being said, in the 30s, early 30s, because September 3rd, 1935, Archie Moore has his pro debut. Now, even though the early years of his career was busy by today's standards, Archie really wasn't making much of an impact on anybody because he was winning the majority of his fights, but he had the occasional loss. And I'm talking like a year, he'd have 7 fights, and he may lose 2. Decent enough record, but like consistently, it just adds up. And he wasn't getting anywhere with it. In 1943, he had 7 fights. Again, 7 fights and won 5 of them. 1 loss, 1 draw. But he also won the California State middleweight title and then lost it to the same guy, Jack Chase. Jack Chase and Archie Moore fought several times throughout his career, much like so many fighters did in those days. They just fought several times a year, several times against each other. In 1946, Archie Moore makes the move up to light heavyweight and is finding a great deal of success. He had a loss against none other than the future world heavyweight champion, Ezzard Charles, in a 10-round decision. This also was the year that he actually started making noise about him not being offered a title shot. Now, there was a group of young black fighters that were incredibly talented, but they did not have the mob backing. Therefore, they never got title shots. And they were called the Murderous Boys. Archie Moore was seen as one of the Murderous Boys until much later when he eventually did get a title shot. So therefore, he no longer was in that fraternity. I will do a show on that later. He was fighting consistently, anywhere from 6 to 14 fights annually. And again, with a great deal of success, like maybe losing one fight a year sort of thing. But still, nothing was actually materializing into anything called a title shot. Now, 1950 rolls around, with the exception of 1950, which was it was like a vacation year where he had a monstrous 2 fights, hence why it was deemed a vacation year. But only to come back in 51 with 18 fights.
Wow.
That's some people's whole career. He had that in 1 year. 16 wins of those 18 fights. Now, in these years, he's actually doing things like he fought heavyweight. He fought anybody who would fight him. And then 52 came around. Now, in 52, he got his opportunity at the age of 36. He got his chance to fight for the world light heavyweight title against Joey Maxim. Now, Joey Maxim, he will forever be in the history books because he was the final person to beat the legend of all legends, the greatest of all greatest, Sugar Ray Robinson, at light heavyweight. Sugar Ray Robinson was attempting to go all the way up to heavyweight and come back down. And while winning, that is, and lost at light heavyweight. In doing so, he lost in the 14th round from nothing shy. It wasn't just a fight. It was under ridiculous heat exhaustion because they were like I think it was in Nevada, outdoors in blazing sun. And out of nothing shy of sunstroke, he sat on the stool for the 15th round. So Joey Maxwell went into history books as beating Sugar Ray Robinson. He wasn't so fortunate with Archie Moore. Archie just pounded him for 15 straight rounds and got a 15-round decision. Archie then goes on from there on to dominate the light heavyweight division for 10 years. He was a champion for 10 years. Now, in those 10 years, he still had losses because Archie just fought and would often go up to heavyweight and fight, even though he's a natural light heavyweight. There's no reason for it, but he just loved to fight. He had a couple of world title defenses. World title shots at heavyweight. Most notably, 1955, September 21st, Yankee Stadium, he gets into the ring and faces off against none other than the legendary Rocky Marciano. The fight starts. It's a decent fight. First round, second round, Archie Moore flattens Rocky Marciano. Still to this day, going on 60 years, 57 years later, people are still questioning whether it was a slow count. Rocky Marciano will end up winning that fight. It was a controversial win. And it's still being argued today. Imagine that. Now, He had quite a few more notable fights, to say the least. But there was one fight that I found incredible, which was, well, it was a title shot that he had given none other than Canada's own Yvon Durrell. The name was, well, his name was the Fighting Fisherman from New Brunswick. They needed some help in those days when it came to, putting the fear of God in people via their ring name. But who am I to say? I call myself a mountain. So he fought Yvon Durrell in Montreal. And he had just finished off a successful year, which included 8 wins in a row plus a draw with another heavyweight, which Howard King. Again, he was just a workhorse, and to watch him, even though Durrell had 79 wins, which is ludicrous by today's standards. That's beyond impressive. 79 wins. The Quebec public, the Canadian public, didn't give him anything called a chance at winning this fight. To the point where the fight was held in Montreal's famous Forum, and the attendance was barely over half. In the Montreal Gazette, it stated that sports fans were snickering when they saw Durrell's name up beside Moore's. This was no one expected much, especially Moore. From this man, but oh my word! Opening bell. Archie Moore gets caught with a thunderous right hand in the first round and goes careening to the ground. All of a sudden, nobody's snickering. All of a sudden, people are giving him a little more respect, most notably Archie Moore. Okay. Archie gets up, makes the count, barely, only to be sent back down to the canvas again.
Wow.
He makes the count barely a second time, only to be sent back to the canvas again. This is in the day before the 3 knockdown rule, obviously. But he made the count, and he barely made the count. And he had a minute left to go. Durrell brought the heat and was tagging him. Mind you, Archie, being Archie, was actually landing punches too in the exchange, but still, he was taking a tremendous beating. And for whatever reason, the Arcadian took his foot off the gas pedal with 30 seconds left and decided to clinch. Maybe to conserve his energy, maybe, I don't know. But he had him out. And history would be different. History would be really different. The bell goes for the first round, and Archie Moore's handlers had to escort him to his corner. Now, with that being said, Archie went smiling and said, "I'm okay." Or was he? The second round turned out to be just as entertaining as the first. Archie was taking a sound pounding, but this time he had regained his wits about him and was blocking, rolling, what have you, and put up a much better fight. But it was still all Yvon Durrell's way. Third round was a whole lot more the same, and then the fourth round came, and down goes Archie Moore. Fourth time. Now, if Archie had just laid there, this is a 42-year-old world champion, but keep in mind, by 36, by the time he got his first world title, won his title, he had already had over 150 professional fights. Nobody would have blinked an eye if he was to just lay there. Now he's looking more at, well, he's had over 200 fights, professional fights. And he's 42 years of age. Granted, fighters today are a lot older than 42, me included. But take into consideration all the advancements in science and nutrition and technique and what have you, and duration of rest period between fights. All of this actually adds up to him probably looking more like a 60-year-old at 42. Nobody would have blinked an eye if he had just laid there, but that's not Archie. And he actually got up and fought on and heard the fourth bell ring. Now, fifth round comes out, and Archie just switched. Now it's back to it's his ring, it's his division, it's his round. So he came back, and he put a good shellacking on Durrell, but Durrell was still game, but he lost that. It was the first round he had lost. Fifth round or sixth round, pretty much the same, and then seventh round, going pretty much the same as the last two, with Archie on the event on the attack. He catches him, and Durrell goes down for the first time in the fight at the end of the seventh round. So he gets up, makes the count, all is well, brushes himself off, comes to dance. Eighth and ninth round, again, all Archie Moore. Durrell still game. Durrell was still game, but Archie gave him a beating. So be it. 10th round comes, and down goes Durrell. Second time touches canvas. He had already blown head and shoulders by anybody's expectations of him by this point in time. The very fact that he's still in the fight, keeping in mind, a fight of this magnitude couldn't sell out the famous Forum. Barely even sold out half. He has far exceeded anyone's expectations of him. He could have laid there, but doesn't. He gets up, makes the count. The bell rings, goes off into, he was knocked down right before the bell was about to ring. So the bell rang as the count was going on. And in those days, you could be saved by the bell. So therefore, he was saved and carried out to his corner. The 11th round starts. And Archie Moore just brought it to him. A sensational fight. knocked him down once, and then knocked him down a second time. And when he knocked down the second time, he couldn't make that count. It was 11th round TKO. Now, what a sensational fight. I thought this was more than telling, because you had this absolute road warrior, the Mongoose. Actually, he was the Mongoose. In later days, they called him the Old Mongoose. And this guy could do it all, and did. At even an old age, like 42, 43 years of age. He went on to fight Dirrell in a rematch, and deservingly so. He gave him another chance at the belt, but this time Dirrell did not prove, well, he didn't have the element of surprise, I guess. Everybody took him seriously, including, most importantly, Moore. And Moore knocked him out in the fourth round. So third round. But more importantly, like I said, his career is littered with exciting fights. The only thing is, he went up against a young Cassius Clay in his second last fight. And Cassius actually stopped him. This is one of the times when he went up to heavyweight. Why did he just stay at light heavyweight? He went up to heavyweight and got stopped by Cassius Clay. This is another example as to why Cassius, now called Muhammad Ali, was the greatest, because he did beat a great like Archie Moore. That's my show. So now, if you like my show, please hit the like button and subscribe. And also smash that notification bell. It's your boy Bala, and that's the scoop.
Thanks very much, Ray. That's a great story to be told of a great fighter who probably fought on many different levels, not just in the ring.
Yeah, by all means.
Yeah. Good stuff. So
I know there's one thing I will find out for tomorrow's session. He has a son who is relatively my age, who was a boxing great. It's between two guys. It's either Montel Griffin or Winky Wright. I can't remember which one it was, but I'll find out which one it is.
Cool. All righty. Thank you very much. And we'll see you tomorrow night then.